How you doing? Good. So good to have you here. This is awesome. I think it's awesome that we're talking about forgiveness tonight, don't you? Yeah, and then pairing it up, mashing it up with like confetti. Sort of interesting. Okay. It's like we're trying to say, it's going to be okay, right? Forgiveness is not bound by time, by life or death, only by you and me. My brother Tim and I were inseparable. We were best friends. That's me on the right in that gorgeous shirt, and him on the left. But we were best friends raised by wolves. It's true. My stepdad came into my family when I was 3, making us a step family. And with his arrival began his assault. Violence and sex were his weapons of choice. I literally cannot remember a time in my life that I didn't know about sex. And what he did to my brother Tim did to me. From the time I was 6 until I was 14 years old, that kind of thing can wreak havoc on a person's soul. Now, none of this with my brother Tim felt like abuse, none of it. We had both known that what we were doing was to be kept a secret, but it never felt wrong, you know? I had never been afraid of my brother Tim until that one day. A day when something happened, but I'll get to that in a moment. My brother Tim died when I was 21. He was 23. What happened to us or between us was never talked about. I tried once, 6 months before he was involved in a fatal motorcycle accident, but he wouldn't have it. And then there was just me. And what was I supposed to do with all of this? In my late 20s, the wheels began to come off in my life. Panic attacks, alcoholism, you know the drill. And that's when I went to see Doug, the counselor. That's what I call him. I told Doug about that one day, the day that something happened, something that I had pushed down for nearly 30 years. I mean, did it even matter anymore? And if it did, how was I supposed to make it right? Tim was gone. There's a word I'm thinking of, Doug said. Do you know what it is? Rape, I say. Am I right? Doug nods his head. How does that make you feel, Matt? I mean, not good. But it doesn't seem like rape. I mean, we did that stuff every day. You didn't do that every day, he said. Basically, I said, I have to disagree with you, Matt, because in your bedroom that day, you said no to Tim. Actually, you said no twice. That wasn't agreed upon. Come on, Doug. Seriously, what is the difference? Force. Force is the difference, he said. So you're saying, my brother, that I was raped? Yes, Matt. I'm saying that you were raped. We sat quiet for a few moments. I could see the blue shag rug before my face in my mind. So I want to ask you again, Matt, how does that make you feel? I had been so angry for so long, for so many years. But after years of looking back, after years of anger, in that moment, I found something I didn't expect to find. Compassion for Tim, for what he'd been through with my stepdad and for what I'd been through with him. We'd grown up in a war zone. We fought side by side. As little boys, man, we did the best that we could. I have to forgive him, I finally told Doug. I want to forgive him. But you know what, Doug? I need Tim to forgive me too. He wasn't alone in this. Neither one of us knew what we were doing. In our brokenness, we did this to each other. The day that I mourned the loss of my brother Tim, I was alone with a friend in a darkened choir room of the Fine Arts building at the college that I was attending, and she began to play a song that was on the piano in the room. I'd never heard the song before, but it pierced into me. It was called Thanksgiving by George Winston. It was a contemplative piece that it opened something painful within me. I sat next to her that night on the piano bench, and I let it out. She played on and on while I wept over the loss of my brother. Fast forward 20 years, I went through an experience called a prayer walk. I was given an iPod with music and audio narration, and I was guided through several rooms. Near the end of the prayer walk was a room called the wall. The instructions began this way. Ahead of you is the wall. Sooner or later, every single one of us hits the wall. These are often walls of our own making, caused by bitterness, anger, hate, and unforgiveness. Unforgiveness. As soon as I heard that word, I thought of my brother Tim. The instructions continued. Take a walk over to the table. You'll see clothespins there. These clothespins represent people. People that you've held a grudge against or have unresolved anger towards. They might be your former friends, bosses, or coworkers, even family members. More accurately, these clothespins represent the bitterness that you still feel toward these people. Write the name of a person that you need to come to terms with on one of the clothespins. As you pick up the pin, ask God to forgive that person for whatever caused the rift between you. Then ask God to forgive you for your anger and resentment. I wrote my brother Tim's name on that clothespin in red marker, and I sat down in the corner of the room. I needed a moment. Behind the narrator's voice, music began to play. I knew the song instantly. Echoing from that choir room 20 years earlier, from the day I mourned the loss of my brother. It was that song. Thanksgiving. I couldn't believe it. I sat in the corner of that room, and I knew that this moment had been prearranged by something greater. As I sat there, I imagined my brother Tim walking into the room and sitting down right next to me. We sat side by side. "I'm sorry," I whispered softly. "So am I." I imagined him saying back to me, "I am so sorry," I said, clinging tightly to the clothespin in my hand with his name on it. "Me too, Matt." "Can you forgive me?" I asked. "Of course, Matt. But can you forgive me?" "Yes. I think, finally, I can." We didn't know what we were doing, did we? No, we didn't. When you're finished writing, walk through the wall. Pin the bad feelings on the hanging strips as you leave the hatred behind. Layers of black fabric had been hung from the ceiling and shredded, forming a black wall with hundreds of clothespins on it. Now, I thought that this mutual act of forgiveness was worthy of its own strip, so I wandered into the dark of the wall looking for a strip of fabric with no other clothespins, but there were no empty pieces. Among hundreds of clothespins, I saw a strip near the back that just had one clothespin on it, which seemed like the next best thing. When I took that strip of fabric in my hand, the clothespin that was already there laid against my wrist, it simply read, Matt. I was stunned. You were already here, I said under my breath. You've already forgiven me. It was as if we had just missed each other. Tears filled my eyes as I pinned his name next to mine on the strip of black fabric. I held them in my hands, and I let thanksgiving fill my chest, fuller than it had ever been. Now, I was getting somewhere. Now, finally, I was moving on. I took a picture of those clothespins that day. I'd love to show you. Yeah. When the prayer walk was over, you were supposed to leave the clothespins, but I took them and I put them in my pocket, which I know stealing. The point had been to leave it behind, but I didn't want to forget this moment, so I put them in my desk at work for safekeeping. But the next day, I thought I should probably find a better place for them. So when I went to my office, I opened that desk drawer. There was only one clothespin in there. The one with my brother Tim's name on it was nowhere to be found. Now, I knew I'd put it in there the day before, and I was frantic to find it. I searched my whole desk. I searched the floor of my office. I retraced the steps out to my car from the day before. I searched the parking lot in a panic. This moment was not going to slip away from me. But as I was on all fours, searching beneath my car, I heard a voice in my spirit. It said 3 words to me. Let him go. Let him go, I said to myself. Yes, it was time. This journey was one of the most difficult things I'd ever done in my life. I wanted to call it quits along the way, but I hadn't. I kept moving forward. On our own, we struggle, you know. But I believe that with something greater than ourselves, God, whatever you conceive that to be, that forgiveness is no longer bound by time, by life, or death, only by you and me. But if we keep moving forward, I believe that we are going to be okay. Oh, my friends, you are so loved. Thank you.